Good evening. And if you're just tuning in, you are listening live to the Angel Rock on 105.3 out of New Orleans, Louisiana. We are also streaming to practically every country in the world here. I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. A little bit about myself. I'm a Canadian clairvoyant medium, a crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, a spiritual teacher and mentor, and also a registered nurse. I always say with my show, if you've never been here before, that I cover all aspects of spirituality, the esoteric, with some truth seeking thrown in there. And the guests that I have on my show, whether what they're doing professionally or extracurricularly, they're making a positive change for humanity. So they come from all walks of life. Tonight, my guest is no different, and I'm going to introduce her in just a second. I want to remind you, as always, if you are listening and you'd like to watch the show live, because I love to include the audience in part of the discussion, I want to make you feel like you're involved because you guys watch this. This is why we have a show and we have this wonderful network. So if you like the show, please share it. We have something for everybody on this network. There's practically 24-hour a day streaming. So when somebody's not live, we've got our archives playing, and we would love for you to share it with your friends because like I say, we cover, you wouldn't believe it, we've probably got a show for it. So, a little bit about my guest, and I need my glasses. Don't you just love when you get older? You think I thought I escaped the scourge of bifocals. Nope. So, her name is Reverend Sheryl Hinds. So, Reverend Sheryl is a spiritual alchemist. Born an intuitive empath, Sheryl has always been walking a spiritual path. Tarot reader for over 35 years, a psychic medium, sound and energy healer, and a universal channel. She assists others by giving them divine messages from all the realms of creation. She is a creative and artistic person. We have a lot in common so far. And with a lifelong passion for learning. She is a well-schooled teacher in the great mysteries of the spiritual, occult, and metaphysical realms. And we were just talking briefly before the show about some of our favorite shows. We've got a lot of those in common too. Reverend Sheryl is a published author, a singer, an artist, and a public speaker. Sheryl feels spiritual communication creates the alchemy of love that changes and heals all things in mind, body, and spirit. She believes we possess within us the power of the Philosopher's Stone. I can't wait to talk about that. And as such, we are fully capable of bringing ourselves into alignment with our inner being and awaken to our own unique abilities, open doorways to our creativity and inspired future possibilities. We can transmute our quote unquote lead into spiritual quote unquote gold, and I agree with that, and embrace the magnificence of our truth and beauty. Welcome, Sheryl. I'm so glad to have you here.
Well, thank you. And correction, it's over 40 years.
Okay, well, that was from our mutual friend, Rain Dalrymple, who was
Rain.
on, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, and
Yeah.
connected me with you. I do want to remind everybody, just before we continue, and I forgot to tell you this, Sheryl, so you're going to hear it too.
All right.
Knock on wood, my phone's been behaving itself and it's only done it once. But if you can still hear me and my picture freezes, my Apple phone loves to go into the spinning wheel of death. I have my laptop right here. So just continue. I will be right back. It just usually reboots and then I can come back on if that happens. Usually it's a good omen to just tell everybody just in case. So it's been 40 years.
Yeah, over 40 years now. So when I first started reading tarot, I was actually working at a crisis center as a family counselor.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And yeah, and I was having a difficulty with this one particular family. It was a single mom with a daughter and a son, and it was just so difficult to get through to them. We'd always break down, and they'd break down into fighting and stuff like that. And then I was telling my girlfriend about it,
Hi,
and
Mike. I'm just going to say hi while you're talking. Go ahead. Sorry.
oh, hi, Mike. And so my girlfriend brought me a deck of tarot cards.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, just try these. I said, well, I've never used them before. And she said, and I was 27 at the time. I'm 70 now. And
No, you're
she
not.
yeah, yeah,
Wow, you
yeah,
don't look it at all.
yeah, thank you. But yeah, I am. Um, so uh, she gave me the cards, and I over lunch I read them. I read the little book as
Mm-hmm.
fast as I could,
Mm-hmm.
laid out some cards, looked up what their meanings were,
Mm-hmm.
and intuited it. And when they came in, I just knew I had to sit in front of the desk. I had to put one by the door, and
Mm-hmm.
the fellow had to be facing the door, and she was on the couch. And so I separated them. We were like became like all four corners, really.
Right. Okay.
And so it's amazing because when I said, okay, so this is what I figured out, and I think these might be the main issues we have to deal with. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
if we have a meltdown today, I'm not your girl. So we're going to have
Mm-hmm.
to get you someone else.
Yeah.
And so when I started talking about what I felt was the core issues, she asked me if her mother has your mother been my mother in touch with you? No. And my sister got a hold of you, didn't she? I
There's
said, I
no
didn't
way
even
you
know.
would know these things, right?
No.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, just call it a hunch. So which one do you
Mm-hmm.
want to work on today?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time we got work done, actual work. So before, especially if I had difficult clients, I started working with tarot, working with my clients
I love
then.
it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then when I left that job, I went out on my own then.
And then you got into the spirituality field, it sounds like, and all that's involved with this wonderful bio that Rain shared with us about your work.
Well, and I was more involved in the paranormal before that. You know,
Cheryl, we
like
have so much in common. I'm going to stop you just for a second. Okay, folks, you know this. And if you don't, you're new to the show. Okay, I usually don't meet my guests before they come on. I trust spirit, as we call it in the business collectively. And that's how mine started. Same thing.
yeah,
Had no idea about
yeah.
angel cards. I have a story. I'm not going to tell it tonight, but I've told it before in the show. What do tattoos and angel cards have to do with these? Kind of like somebody just handing you a deck, you got no clue what to do with it. And so you were always intuitive then? Like I usually start at the
Yeah.
beginning with people. So did you always kind of know things, but like you didn't know why you knew them, or what was the paranormal
Yes.
experiences? I'd love to hear.
Well, I started becoming aware of things when I was about 3 years old.
Hmm.
And I recall that at that time I used to be terrified of owls. And I used to tell my
Oh.
mom and dad, the eyes are coming to get me.
Hmm.
And it was about the eyes. And the eyes are coming to get me. And I can remember I became a burrito at night and rolled myself up.
Hmm.
um, and that's a good question about
I
Ouija boards, by the
know.
way.
I want to
I
share
my
one
God,
thing with you before we
yeah,
say anything else. Now, it's
yeah,
interesting you were afraid of owls. I don't know if you've heard of them work, and I'm probably going to get his last name wrong because I'm going from memory. Mike, I think it's Clennet. I'll have to look it up. I'll post it in the after show notes where I posted, and you guys will see it. He has this big thing, and it's really interesting about people that see owls or like have some sort of feelings that they always seem to have UFO and ET experiences
yes.
hand in hand with the owls.
Isn't
Hmm.
that something that they plant that image in your brain?
Hmm.
So I was finding that there was also involved with ET kinds of things. Is
Hmm.
that you often find motion, like with drawers so I had a doll,
Hmm.
and I remember I dressed up as my little
Excuse me.
burrito, and I had like this much of a blanket that
Yeah.
I could look out, and my doll, her eye blinked at me.
Oh.
Well, when you're 3 and 4 years old, you're gonna scream. You're gonna
Hmm.
scream
Hmm.
bloody murder.
Yeah.
And so I, my poor parents, I was the firstborn of five, so they had
Okay.
no idea what the hell are we going to do with this
Yeah.
kid. So
Hmm.
they took me to a child psychologist, and he diagnosed me with ADHD at the time.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and
Hmm.
my mom said to him, but that doesn't explain why she knows things that other people don't.
Yeah.
And I used to just know things, and I would just blurt it out. And I would
Hmm.
say, well, Uncle Al told me. And she said,
Hmm.
what Uncle Al? Well, you know, Uncle Al. Well, the only Uncle Al we have is dead.
Yeah,
And I
that Uncle
go,
Al.
yeah, that Uncle Al. And it
Yep.
was, yeah. So as a young kid, I knew then, by the time I was 4 years old, I knew something was going on when I was 3, maybe even before that. But I knew something was going on. By the time I was 4, I knew very, very loudly inside me. I knew that something was different.
Okay.
Something was different. Yeah.
That is, I always like to hear people's stories, how they kind of get their foot in the door with spirituality or our
Hmm.
gifts. I believe all, no, this is just my belief. And then we're going to get to your question, Mike, because we both think it's a great one. I really do.
Oh,
Um,
I do too.
I think that all human beings, and that's part of my message I teach people, is we are so much more powerful, incredible beings than we've ever been led to believe. And part of that is we all have a second sense. And I feel it's very, very, very developed in young children and animals because I work within the paranormal as well. And first thing I'll say, do you have any little children around or pets? And I say, what are the animals or what are the young ones doing? So, Mike's question for those of you that are listening to the podcast, or possibly you are listening on the replay, he's asked, I'm new to spirit. Do psychics agree with Ouija boards? And you're the guest, so I will let you go first and I'll give my take on it.
All right. I'm interested in hearing. Okay, so I did a lot of studying under the Lazarus material.
Mhm.
Lazarus talks about the 4 different levels that we deal with here. There's the physical plane, there's the
Mhm.
astral plane, the causal plane, and then the mental plane.
Mhm.
And what happens with Ouija boards and the pendulums, they are the most easily subjected to uh, uh, energies from lower realms.
Mhm.
And so if you go into the astral plane, there's good and not good there. There's
Mhm.
both. So they have diamonds there and they also have coal.
Mhm.
So, but here's the thing, it's like putting your hand into a bucket of water
Mhm.
and you can't pull it out without it being wet.
Mhm.
So in the astral plane, if you duck into, it's like a pond. When you dunk into the pond, you might get the diamond that you found that you're looking at the bottom of the pond, but you're also going to get all the scum and the pond scum that
Mhm.
comes with it. So most people don't know this. So when they are dealing with Ouija boards or pendulums for the first time, especially Ouija boards, if you don't know, you're more susceptible to getting pond scum
Mhm.
than unless you know, to then meditate, raise your vibration to a higher vibration, go to the mental realms
Mhm.
where all your masters, spirit guides, all those elevated people, Jesus, Mother Mary, all of these people are there in that mental realm. And gods and goddesses. So if you raise your vibration and you go to the mental plane, and have a spirit guide with you
Mhm.
before you even touch a Ouija board, the chances of those lower vibrations are not going to affect what you do.
I'd love to talk a little bit more because some people may not know what raise your vibration is. The other thing I'm going to add is like attracts like energy on this planet. But I'm going to give my analysis because I get this question a
Yes.
lot. So the way I always describe it is, say you've got John, and John's decided that he wants his chain link fence removed from his backyard. He's going to do it himself. He's heard, just various conversations that a chainsaw is a great thing to remove a chain link fence. So he happens to march himself down to the local hardware store, grabs a chainsaw, has no idea what he's doing. He's never used a chainsaw before. And then he brings it home, doesn't read the instructions, and somehow magically gets his chainsaw started. So there he goes, marching over to the chainsaw, goes to cut the chainsaw or goes to cut the chain link fence, apart, breaking it down, and is absolutely shocked beyond belief because the chainsaw kicks back and cuts his arm off. Is the
Mm.
Ouija board bad? No, it is just a tool, just like a pendulum and everything else. But everything on this planet is energy. We are
Mhm.
energy. We
Mm.
are made up of energy. One of the laws of energy is it can either be, it can't be basically created, but can be transferred from one place to another. So we have quite a negative view collectively, I would say, around the world,
Yeah.
energy
Yeah.
around Ouija boards, that they are evil, they are bad. And I'm
Mhm.
adding to Cheryl's answer because I agree 100% with what she has shared. Now, a lot of people aren't aware of spirit guides and angels and things like that, right? Because
Mhm.
I know I was in Toronto when my children were small, and I happened to go by the Disney store, and they're right up front and center on a pedestal. Blue Mickey Mouse Ouija board for boys, pink Ouija board for girls. So
Wow.
we're fun. Yeah, I swear to you, absolutely. So what happens is, right, people aren't aware of this, but then you get into things that I think are imperative, including, and I'd love to talk about raising the vibration, because I used to hear this years ago when I first started this. I'm going, what does that mean? But basically, there's collectively already, I believe, an energetic belief about, like, negative energetic belief about Ouija boards because of the horror
Yes.
movies. People have had horror stories with not just
Yes.
diving in, no idea what they're doing. I think you need to be shown, because the moral to the story of John with the chainsaw trying to cut down the chain link fence, again, Ouija boards aren't negative, it's a tool. But you have to be shown how to use that tool. You know how to be able to use it safely. So basically, what I'm saying is, all of what Cheryl has said with your guides, your angels, raising your vibration. I think you also need to know how to set boundaries, how to open the session, and how to close it. What do you think?
Mm.
Did I miss anything with that, Cheryl?
Well, I mean, if you don't know what you're doing and you're
Mm-hmm.
working with spiritual tools,
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of like living in a busy city and
Mm-hmm.
you open up your front door and just invite
Hi,
everybody in.
Ken. Mm-hmm. I agree. So let's talk about raising your vibration, though, because I know we hear this quite a bit within our field, and a lot of
Yes.
people may not understand what that is.
Hmm. Well, I don't see where there's any difference in the sense of like vibration is vibration, period. And
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of like an analogy of lighting everybody up in the world according to their skin color. And
Mm-hmm.
there isn't much difference from one person to the next,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a big difference from the first person to the last person. And so but all in between, it becomes, it's just, it becomes this beautiful um, essence. And I don't think there's anything that is truly evil or bad
Mm-hmm.
except what you give it, the name you give it.
Mm-hmm.
You can raise a vibration in it, and raising that vibration means how you feel about something.
Mm-hmm.
So if something makes you feel negative
Mm-hmm.
and it brings you down, it's like it's a lower vibration.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost has a heavier feel to it,
Right.
where so you almost feel it more physically. It's more dense.
Mm-hmm.
And a higher vibration is like when you raise your vibration, you are almost coming out of that physical realm. You're coming out of the physicality of energy, really. You're kind of lightening yourself. You're lightening it up. And lighten the load is literally what you're doing. And so the lower vibration, the lowest of all vibrations, um, if you start stacking up all the vibrations, um, it the very heaviest or densest to the very lightest, like the lightest, you're probably, as some people would say, then you'll be ascending, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
transitioning. And at the very bottom, it could be the same thing. You could be transitioning with the lowest vibration, only it's through something like maybe murder, or you are the murderer and you get
Yeah,
killed.
so the way
And
I like to explain it too, because like
yeah,
I know
I've
I
tried
haven't
to
explained this
explain
to
it
you. We have people
difficult.
listening from all over the world that maybe never heard of any of these terms before, ever,
Yeah,
ever, ever, or they're listening. So the easiest way to explain it, I like to use with my people, like because I again work with lots of paranormal, and I don't think I told you this. I end up mentioning every show. I don't mean to, but the topic will come up. We
yes,
had something very evil and dark in our last home for 11
yeah,
plus
yeah.
years. My husband thrown 15 feet across the kitchen, bit burnt, scratched. This thing identified itself, gave me its name, its spelling. It's a crazy story. We've actually shared it on the Travel Channel's Paranormal Survivor. So I used to hear this term all the time. I always say we never went
Yes.
looking for the paranormal. It found us.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
from the age of 4, far back as I can remember. So I kept trying to understand, well, what is vibration? Like, what do you mean? And so again, for me, and feel free to jump in, but I found the easiest way for me to have understood it, so I share this with people, is low vibrational energy. You can liken it to the akin of like anger, hatred. Actually, anger is not too bad because it's kind of movement, like you're moving, you can
Yeah.
kind of move to another spot. So when
It
people
could
are
be
raising their
free.
vibration, what could they do, right?
Yes.
So open the windows, get some fresh air, bring in some flowers or plants, some light, watch a movie that always
Hmm.
makes you laugh or makes you feel so good. We all have one of those movies pretty well, or people you know that when you get together with them, that you're going to have a great time, they're going to make you so happy. That's a really high vibration. Happiness, love, joy,
Laughter.
laughter.
Love is the
Yeah, you're on
highest.
this. You just said what I was going to say, laughter. So that's kind of what
Huge.
helps. I understand what you're saying, Mike. And Carrie's here too. Hey, Carrie, so great to have you here. She's a supporter of my show and the network. So glad to have you here. She says hi, Sheryl, too. Now, Mike shared, thanks, guys. My older sister, Maria, was obsessed with the board at about
Hmm.
11 years old, and she went down a very dark path. He says,
Yes.
she had 6 kids and abandoned them all seriously. And Mike says, I never understood that. So I don't know
Oh,
if you want to
yeah.
comment. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My feeling is that when you're if you are again delving into that paranormal side of things, and there's no doubt about it, we live in a world of polarity. This
Absolutely.
universe is opposites. We're dealing with positive and negatives all the time. So there could be the darkest of the darkest that you could end up dealing with, and it's sort of outside of ourselves, but it's not within the and perhaps we deal with something that takes us down a dark path, and it's because we don't know how to protect ourselves. We don't know how to say, get out of my life and don't come back. And we, and there could be some of those spirits that, but I feel that she went down that dark path, and what I sense is that it just got overwhelming for her, and having kids around, and wasn't able to cope. That's my feeling about where she went, is just, oh my God, I can't cope with this anymore. And see, if there had been a lot of laughter in her life, and somebody just that was lovingly supporting her in that sense of trying to, that knew more than she did about this, and
Mm-hmm.
she could, and there are things that happen like possession, and yeah,
I was going
so
to add to that, Sheryl, because it's
mhm.
interesting and sadly interesting. I don't mean that this is something wonderful, Mike. It's very sad, but you mentioned she was 11 years old. And some of
Yes,
the stuff that I have noticed with teenagers, especially teenagers that are almost in those tween years and the older
yes,
teens, because they're going through puberty, their hormones are all over, their energy is all over. They are actually so powerful energetically, like literally can move things with emotion because of the mood swings. Like it's just crazy some of the things that happen. So you're also at a very prime age because, like
yeah,
Sheryl said, we live in a world of duality here, and we do have lower astral beings that are here. And they take advantage of, and especially somebody that age. They have quite a pure soul, usually at that age. They haven't really encountered a lot of adult things. And, like we'd mentioned, like murder. I think, Carrie, it was you, Sheryl, that had said, murder or whatever. Like that's very low, 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 dense vibration or energy. So
Mm-hmm.
she, you wouldn't really run into a lot. So she could have been a prime individual, especially if she's very sensitive to energy, like being
Mm-hmm.
empaths. I know I mentioned that about Cheryl's bio, myself as well. And then, depending on, like you said, Cheryl, at the beginning of your story, your parents didn't know what to do with you. A lot of parents didn't know what to do with this, or maybe she never told anybody. Maybe it was very lonely, or it could have been anything. And, it always starts out very nice with a lot of these lower denser energies, and they can get quite nasty, and you get kind of drawn in, or they can fool you, like, it's a friend or it's a relative, or they'll tell you all kinds of stuff. And then as you get drawn deeper and deeper and deeper, like Sheryl had said, you can get attachments, you can get darker
Yep.
stuff. Like my big thing as a light worker, I've seen somebody actually possessed, and I
Yes.
never want to look into that again. And levitating on the
Mm-mm.
camera. And I remember I didn't know, it was 3 o'clock in the morning when I was working with this person. Nobody was awake. I found one of my friends again in Canada. I was so lucky, but so he witnessed it, but there wasn't a lot we could do. But my point
Yes.
is, with my Akashic Records mentor, I actually contacted her. I was taking her advanced course, and I said, "Why is this happening? I don't want to deal with this kind of stuff. I consider myself a light worker," and she really, really helped give me a little bit of clarity. And I'm guessing
Yes.
yourself too, Sheryl, with working with the paranormal, that sometimes we need light workers involved with this sort of lower vibrational energetic situations, say with some
We
difficult
do.
paranormal things, because we're able to bring the light to it. So, do you want
Yeah.
to add to that?
And well, yes, and I have found that people who have been possessed,
Mm-hmm.
um, they uh, the spirit that is within them are very selfish, and they want that person all to themselves. It it's no different than finding an individual here, like the classic term is narcissistic psychotic,
Mm-hmm.
or somebody along those lines, where I want to possess you,
Mm-hmm.
literally in the physical sense, and the psychological sense,
Mm-hmm.
and the emotional sense. But it's no different, because you've got a spirit that's within you that wants you all to themselves. They don't want to share.
And preys
And
on you too, usually when you're at your lowest.
absolutely.
That's what happened to this individual, one of the most
Yes.
lovely souls I've ever met.
Hmm.
And what had happened, her aunt that was like a mom was dying, and she's
Hmm.
working full time, kids to look after, running to the hospital. She was exhausted. And so they took advantage of that. We're not at our strongest, right? Like if we're sick or depressed, a lot of times if there's any substance abuse can make you open to that kind of stuff. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Sheryl. I didn't know we were going to go here. I always say before the show, Spirit, where are we going with this?
Well, and I think it's really important to discuss
Mm-hmm.
some of that, the dark side, because there's so many light workers out there right now,
Mm-hmm.
that are dealing with it. And when we talk about raising vibrations, it's whatever makes you feel the best, what makes you feel
That's it
good.
in a nutshell. I didn't mean to yell. I got so excited. That's it. Whatever
Yeah.
makes you feel the best. I got to remember that one. I'll give you credit always, Sheryl, for it, but that's perfect.
And so if you're working with things that don't make you feel the best, then get the F out of there.
Yep. Yep. And
Right.
same thing, people, even people in your
Yeah.
life. Like, I don't know about you. We were on your story and then we got off in this direction. I want to say hi to Michelle Pratt. She is a supporter of this network and show as well. She's over in Australia. She says, "G'day." So we've got a bunch of people from all over the world here already. And I want to remind people, the only places I'm able to see the comments is if you join us on the YouTube channel UFO Paranormal Radio. and we're on our secondary channel, UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials. Or if you go over to our page on Facebook, it's under UFO Paranormal Radio Network. I should also remind you the call letters that we kind of call, it's an internet radio podcasting. Actually, it's broadcast out of New Orleans, Louisiana. So I want to give a huge shout out to Joe Montaldo, who owns a network and provides this platform for us. He's traveling right now, so travel safe, Joe. He has lots of great shows of his own on the network. But I wanted to remind you of that because we're also called United Public Radio Network. So that's why it's UPRN, but we have something for everybody. I'm going to read Mike's comment if that's okay, Sheryl.
Yes.
He says, thank you so much. I've never sought an explanation for this before. You guys are so lovely. Well, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
It said, she presents as a psychopath and you've not seen her for many years. And you said Maria was using hard drugs at an early age. And, there's lots of reasons. You know what I always say, and I've been around people that use drugs and alcohol my whole life, not myself, but personally as well as professionally. And I always say somebody
I grew up in the 60s.
Well, I was born in 1965, so there you go. But
I was in 52.
Well, I was going to say that, you know what, nobody wakes up one day and says, hey, you know what I want to do with the rest of my life? I want to become an alcoholic. I want to become a drug user.
Know.
It's pain. It's pain. I believe there's a genetic component sometimes. Sometimes it comes out of nowhere. But I believe it's pain that somebody is not dealing with. And for whatever reason, they try one of these substances, right? They start to realize they like the way it makes them feel. And as life starts to happen, it masks those feelings. They don't have to deal with them.
So an empath, now imagine an empath is a person who feels everything. They're like, they're like spiritual chameleons, and they're like psychic sponges. They just mop everything.
Lightning rods.
Yes. Yes. And they're just soaking everything up around them. And it could be, depending on the empath that you are, you could be soaking stuff up that's global or universal, like cosmic, or from people that you're close to, or people that you're not close to and don't know at all. You can feel tsunamis, those kinds of things. And so if you are a person who is open to much of this, then you're just going to be soaking up all this stuff and all these feelings and emotions. And, and I'm not saying how I feel one way or another, but when Trump was voted in, for example, I spent almost 3 days in bed. I almost couldn't get out of bed. I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? And then I went, oh, okay.
So you were picking up collectively the discord from around the world.
Yeah.
And I agree, because as an empath, and like, for example, and I'm sure Cheryl's going to probably have a story like this. I walk into a store, and actually how I found out I was an empath, I was in third year university getting my nursing degree, and I was late. I was late to a nursing class, and I was angry about something, and I don't usually get angry, but I really thought I had masked it. And I just came in and sat down quietly. And my professor stopped the class, and she said, there's about 60 people in there. And she said, Lorilei, when you walk in the classroom and you're in a great mood, the whole classroom's in a great mood. But when you're in a bad mood, like right now, it affects the whole class. And I think my whole mouth dropped because I didn't know what that meant. That's why I still remember it to this day. But I can be in a shopping mall and or store, and people will just come right to you. And not everybody that's empathic, it's that way. Like, I think you described it beautifully, Sheryl, that we all have different things that we can feel, we can see, we can, but there's many different ways to define an empath. And I love what you said, that we basically feel everything, but they'll come tell you your whole life story. That's what happens to me. And then they'll say, I
Yes,
don't know
that's
why
why
I'm
you're
doing this.
doing
I
what
don't
you
even know
do.
you. Yeah, I don't even, I knew you'd probably say that. They'll say, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't even know you. And they feel
Yes,
it. Hmm.
yes, yes,
Hmm.
absolutely. And it's so funny because I've done many psychic fairs, and
Hmm.
I had kind of hung up my psychic fair days last year,
Hmm.
um, and I said, nope, we're not going to do any more tarot card readings on. No, I'm done. And then I get a phone call from a friend who says, there's this tour and these are really good guys and I think you'll enjoy them. So
Yeah.
guess what I'm doing? I was doing this psychic fair for about 3 months and um, of this year. And there it was remarkable. And it was amazing because something shifted for me this year, and I don't
Hmm.
quite understand all of it, why the route. But what I do know is that when I went and did the psychic fair, this time had been years since I'd been out. I noticed how many people were ADHD. Well, and they would call that neurodivergency, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so you're neurodivergent, and how many people were on that spectrum?
Hmm.
And they were so empathic, and they
Hmm.
were there and they were depressed. They sat down in front of me and I'd look at them and go, okay, so you have ADHD, you're on medication, and you're an empath. And it
Hmm.
was like their eyes would be this big, right?
Hmm.
But I could feel it in them this time, whereas before it was working a lot with the indigo kids. And I don't know if some
Yeah.
people will know about
Some
indigo
people will
kids, but
know. Yeah.
yeah,
I
but
think we, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. So that was very interesting in that sense, because I started seeing how many people sitting in front of me were either an empath or
Hmm.
empath. It was just bizarre because normally,
Yeah.
yeah,
Is your phone, I'll let you grab that. I was just going to say that I've actually been saying over the last few years, I almost feel like my eldest is 27 and my youngest is 24, and he has severe autism. And both of my boys have had gifts. And you'll notice this, most of you, if you have children, and if they don't display it, there's nothing wrong, but you may find that your children are very intuitive and pick up a lot of things.
yeah,
And I've almost been feeling, because our house was always a house, a lot of the kids maybe didn't have parents that were home, or for whatever reason weren't
hmm,
very involved. They had no one to speak to. So I made it very clear they weren't coming to my house. I wasn't their friend. But, if they needed to speak to a mom, or wearing a mom's hat, if you will. So my whole point of that
yeah,
is that I almost started to notice like we have a new breed of human being with these
yes.
children that are coming up. I hate the term of millennial, because I
Oh,
don't
I
think
do.
that that's what it is. I hate
It's not
labels.
quite.
Hmm.
It's not quite. That's right.
Hmm.
And yes, yes,
Hmm.
yes. I
Hmm.
agree with you. We are. What's the word? What's the word when we're moving forward and something grows exponentially and
I
everything
would
is
just think
breaking down?
progressing exponentially, or
There's
evolving, if you will.
another word for
Hmm.
it. There's
Hmm.
another. Yeah, it'll come to me.
Somebody will put it in the chat. I'm sure they will. Yeah,
Yeah,
Carrie's saying she agrees as well. Yeah. And Mike, I want to
yeah.
add, he says, Arlene, I think that's what you meant to say. You said, and you said, sorry if I spelt that wrong. I'm a very senior nurse. Well, welcome, fellow nurse. And I'm so glad to have
Yeah.
all of you here. And this is what I like to do. And you know what? I do this honestly before every show. I just say, where are we going with spirit? I had acceleration, Carrie just said. Is that the word you were thinking?
It's like acceleration, only it is um, global. It it's
Ah.
happening. This is why before there is immense change, there's a breaking down of old patterns. So right now,
Mhm.
think about gender roles being challenged. Um,
You got to be
are,
careful with some of these words because they're buzzwords on YouTube. That's okay, but if we want to see the C word or anything, we got to be a little careful with the jabby jab or anything. So,
yeah, so yeah, so here we all are, and this is informative, so I don't think that they would take it down because nothing bad is being
oh,
said.
but
But
they won't with this. I didn't give you a heads up. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but I think it's important. But go ahead, Cheryl. I want to hear what you have to
yeah,
say.
and it's because everything is being challenged right now.
Mm-hmm.
All the things that we have hold sacred, our sacred cows,
Mm-hmm.
are all being challenged, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like the roles that we played. This is what a woman's supposed to be like. This is what a
Mm-hmm.
man's supposed to be like. All of those are being challenged,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what, and all of us are born with intuition. All of us are born psychic, but not everybody has that calling. See, that's what's
Mm-hmm.
different with you and I. That was our calling. So
Right.
we were born more open, with the
Mm-hmm.
veil wasn't as heavy over us. So some people, it isn't until later in life that they come into that.
Mm-hmm.
And so more and more and more people are, it's because the light workers, we're all firing up that grid of humanity. And again, let's go to those higher vibrations, right?
Yes.
So we are lifting humanity, we are lifting the spirit of humanity into a better place. But by doing that, you're also, you're opening up the doors
Mm-hmm.
to change. You're opening up the doors to people suddenly becoming psychic who were never. I'm getting more psychic. Is that for real? Like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I never used to see spirits, and now I'm seeing spirits. Is that weird? It's, so there's a lot of those kinds of things that are happening all over the
Right.
world, all over the world. So
And
it's
people
not,
are awakening
yeah,
to truths that they weren't aware of before. And I think what's happening, like I love the way you explained how you just did, Cheryl. And it's true because people are starting to realize that a lot of the beliefs that they possibly, places they went for information, things that they trusted. And again, I think it's breaking down old systems because we are evolving, because people are starting to learn that we don't need to be looking to somebody else. We can look, we could research, we could question things. It's okay to do that. Or, like you said, the traditional roles are being challenged. But I think that has to happen if we're going to
yes,
have a change, right? Like the old systems have to be tore down, if you will, and
yeah.
start all over again, but in to make progress.
Well, our world, I think, is like, if anybody's who's ever familiar with the regular tarot card, is the Tower.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The Tower, and that's
Mm-hmm.
where humanity is right now.
Mm-hmm.
We are in that time period of the Tower, which
Mm-hmm.
means the very foundations of where we used to be and what we used to were taught that were real
Right.
are now, those are crumbling.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so we're all very unsteady. So many of us don't know where to hang our hats anymore,
True. True.
you know? And,
Mm-hmm.
and so we're noticing things that are happening differently. Just like
Mm-hmm.
Michelle in the last one said, people are always looking at me,
Yeah.
in a mall or something like that. Well, people who are empathic, and I will explain the difference between being empathic or being an empath.
Okay. Thank you.
There's a difference. Okay, so um, being empathic means that we can feel what another person is feeling because we've experienced what they are feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can feel really torn up about my friend who's just lost a pet,
Mm-hmm.
and I can feel really torn up about her having to put her dog down. And so my heart is breaking for her because I've experienced it. And I know what she's feeling. I truly know what she's feeling. So I am being empathic.
Mm-hmm.
So an empath doesn't have to have that experience.
That's right.
An
Mm-hmm.
empath is going to pick up and feel as though they have had that experience. They will just feel that, and they are going like, oh my God, where's this feeling coming through? My heart is broken.
Mm-hmm.
And and again with Michelle, yes, I can relate. And so as an empath, it is now a noun in my opinion.
Oh,
And
yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's so we are again that higher vibration. We are lighter inside. We're that's why they call us light workers, because
Mm-hmm.
we're light. We're full
Mm-hmm.
of light, and
Mm-hmm.
people are going to notice us. Doesn't matter what we look like on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
People will notice us
Mm-hmm.
anyway because of
What
the
I
light.
find though is a lot of people that realize they can pick up a lot of things. Like where I feel like, especially again in the younger generations, it almost seems to be this epidemic of anxiety. But I really
Yeah,
believe we are having a lot more empaths coming, like being born onto this earth. And, I've met so many people that will say being an empath is a curse, like I said. I like to
yeah,
look at it as a superpower because,
it
once
is.
you learn how to manage it and you
Yeah,
learn what is yours, meaning what is mine and what is
yeah,
something else. And a great thing, especially if you're new to this, because for myself, I pick up people's pain.
yeah,
I can touch, like if somebody's worn jewelry, I know what the emotion from feeling it, what was in there. And each one of us is unique as an empath to be able to pick up this stuff. I believe all human beings have some sort of aspect of this, but
yeah,
some more developed than others, right? Just like some people are natural born mathematicians or musicians or singers or, leaders. It's kind of what it is, I think, with our gifts. We have strengths in some areas. We can strengthen some areas, say within this realm of, if you want to call it sensitivity, knowing,
yeah,
and yeah. So, but where I was going with that was the one thing I've learned, and when I'm teaching and working with people, is if I always say take what resonates with you, but I also like
yeah,
to share maybe what might work. So I always ask myself, is this mine? And in my within the mind's eye, and your body will always answer you. Your higher self will answer you. You will hear
yes.
either a yes or no. It's just
Hmm.
hard to be able to trust those answers in the beginning, but I always say, well, go with it. Go with it and see what happens, right? Because you're
Well,
always going to find out. Mm-hmm.
I would say the most important thing to and one that my mom, she got to know that I would be good, and then in within 5 seconds I wouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
And so then she started paying attention to that and go, who were you thinking of?
Aw.
Who were you talking to? So my
Mm-hmm.
mom started asking those questions. So I really feel that that's an important question to ask
Absolutely.
yourself as well. Is okay, 5 minutes ago I was feeling like the bee's knees,
Yeah.
and now I feel like heck, and I
Mm-hmm.
just can't. I don't know why, and I'm scattered, and I feel
Mm-hmm.
depressed, and or I
Or
feel whatever.
anxiety. I hate when that happens to
Yeah,
me. And it's like, why am I feeling anxious? I have no reason to have anxiety. Oh, wait. Okay. Now I know where it's coming from. Mhm. Not from
yeah,
me. But
yeah. See, and and this is also very true. And like I have just looked at the my granddaughter who's now 12 and going on 150, and she is, and looking at what she has come through, her anxiety levels are so high. And I'm sorry I'm talking about you, my dear, but she is such a learning. I've learned so much through her,
Mhm.
and so I hope she forgives me. So, but
We don't
anyway,
know her name. We don't know who she is. And we send her nothing but love.
yeah,
There you go.
okay, yes, absolutely. So um, she ended up having to be homeschooled
Hmm.
because she could not, and she was happy. She'd get up in the morning. She's happy to go to school, um, and she'd even be happy when she got there. But the closer she got to the school, and as she's standing in the lineup, you can see her starting to fidget
Mhm.
and fidget. And then by the time she got into the school, she was like having a breakdown.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
it's like, yeah, this kid is so sensitive to that
Mhm.
point that, and she's so much better now. Once my daughter took her out of school
Mhm.
and started doing homeschooling with her,
Mhm.
oh, God bless her. She made such a turnaround.
Yeah.
She became a different person,
Mhm.
you
And
know, and then
sometimes that's
yeah.
not, you know what, and what a beautiful thing that your daughter did and she has you in
Oh,
her life, because I think that that's so important for anything in life, is to look at the situation without judgment. And it's always so easy to step back from the outside looking in, no matter how
mhm,
involved you are. But if you're not directly involved in it, and her mom was able to see it, you were able to see the change in your granddaughter. So it was the best situation for her.
mhm.
And that's why I like when I was talking about systems. You know what? Yeah, we've all grown up. We all went to school, most of us in classrooms and what have you. That's not always the ideal. Oh, sorry. That's not always the ideal environment for some people to learn, right? Like
Which is
sometimes they
why,
need something different. Hmm.
yes, and which
Hmm.
is why there's so many alternatives now. There
Hmm.
are students who, we're still being schooled the
Hmm.
same old way, although things are even starting to change there.
Hmm.
And so finally kids, they're like, they just can't do it anymore. And so they are pulled out of school, or
Hmm.
they drop out. But there's
Hmm.
alternatives now to offer them. And I think parents are seeing their kids struggle in school, offer them the alternatives
Hmm.
instead of trying to push them into a system that's not working. It's like a fish trying to climb a tree and
I love it.
basing their intelligence levels on that.
Hmm.
And so, you're a fish and you can't climb a tree, like so the tree is the system, right?
Hmm.
And so you can't judge that. We're
Or
not
as hard
all
as you try and put a square peg into a round
it.
hole, not
Yeah,
everything fits in the round hole. Again, being the
yeah,
system. But I
yeah,
think that you hit a really important point there too. As your daughter is your granddaughter's mother, obviously, but to be
yes,
able to, and even your mother. That was very special that your mother could step back, because not everybody has that kind of support system,
true.
especially like I my mother makes fun of people that do what I do and you do. And again, that's something sometimes too, I've had many a conversation sometimes when we start going down, say, the spirituality path, or it opens up before us and
Yes,
presents itself, you'll find people will say, "You've changed. I don't know who you are anymore." And it's
yeah,
just maybe people are growing in a different direction. And then you start getting into things like contracts and, people that are going to be in part of our life when we incarnate in this lifetime, right? Because we're not
yeah,
here by accident, right?
yeah. No,
Hmm.
no, none of us are. And no, and in fact, I could, you know what? It's just getting off topic here, but I can actually remember me choosing to come here.
Can you?
Yeah,
I love
it
that.
happened in an instant. I'm in my car driving, and I look over at this fellow beside me at a stoplight, and he just gives me this great big beautiful grin,
Hmm.
and I'm grinning back at him, and I'm thinking, and I just had a new boyfriend. He was in the car with me,
Yeah.
um, and very new, like a week.
Hmm.
And so I turned and looked at the lights again, and I said, "Oh my God, I love people. I love humanity. I absolutely love them. They're
Right.
beautiful. We're beautiful in our pain. We're beautiful in and and then all of a sudden I hear click, and he lights a cigarette, and he's looking at me like I have three heads. Like, well, that boyfriend didn't last,
But you know what? And I was thinking
but I
about this earlier when
remember.
we were talking, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think I'm not telling people how to think. I'm just sharing that
Yeah.
it took with me for a while, like you shared, okay, with the boyfriend that lasted a week, that maybe it was something that you needed to help him with in this lifetime. Because I think we all set goals for things that our soul is to learn, or a life lesson to help us grow and evolve, right? So maybe
Yeah.
you played a role and that role was met in his life lessons, or possibly vice versa, right? But then
Yeah.
when you start looking and it gets so convoluted, but it once you sort of figure it out, and if it resonates, that we have thousands and thousands of past lives, right? That's what I
Yeah.
believe. And we
Well,
incarnate in.
in that second, in just in it felt like that moment was like 5 minutes, 10 minutes that this memory hit, and yet a second, split second. And I was looking down on the planet, and
Mhm,
somebody was with me, and I probably a mentor, spirit guide with
mhm,
me. I'm looking down at the planet, and the voice beside me says, "Yes, but don't you realize that everybody down there?" He said, "Look," he said, "Look at them. Look at them. They're killing each other. They're
mhm,
stealing from each other. They don't trust or believe each other. There's all of this. All he was pointing out all of these horrible things about the planet. And there's war, and I started laughing, and I
okay.
said, "Yes,
Mhm,
yes, it is." And I said, "But you know what they're all trying to do is every single one of them are trying to find love in some
mhm,
way. The end result is love."
mhm.
And if they're not that evolved, then it's going to be at least
Primal.
happy.
And really
Yes,
and primal, because
yes.
yeah, when I connect with spirit, or you connect, with
Hmm.
many, there's ascended masters. I mean, I always say the door to this world, when you open it, is so
Yeah.
infinitesimal. I can even say infinitesimal in the way of size compared to what life just seems like. But
Yes.
I always hear, humanity, human beings are a young race. We're a newer
Yeah.
type species. So yes, we are going to be quite primal in the things that we do. Now, when we come back here, maybe 1,000 years from now, we're going to be a completely different, probably evolved race, right?
Well, and that's what I said to him is I said, "Yes, but," and then the person and the spirit guy beside me said, because I was laughing, they said, "You're going to do this again, aren't you?" And I said, "Yep, just for the love of it."
Mm-hmm.
And once I had that memory, it made me realize what my purpose here is.
I love it.
And my purpose here is to incite love.
Hmm.
That's what the hippie movement was all about, right?
That's
Love,
true. It
love,
was,
love,
yes.
and peace. And I was a flower child,
Oh,
totally,
really?
like
I love it. Hmm.
totally. And I truly, I didn't do the drugs though. I
Hmm.
mean, I missed out. But uh,
Hmm.
but
Hey.
anyways, yeah, well, I didn't, but but I
Hmm.
no, I didn't get into that drug scene. But my mom was
Hmm.
very protective as well.
Hmm.
But I realized that after I had that, I realized that all my life, that's all I've ever wanted to do is I want I wanted to be the best self that I could be.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to love people. I mean, that of course I had to learn the hard way that
Hmm.
some you have to love from a distance, some you don't love
Yes.
at all, right? You can
Or you
love,
put up
yeah,
boundaries, like, even when you get
boundaries.
into things like forgiveness, right? That's a hard one. And when we really think about it, forgiveness is a gift to ourselves, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
we don't have to forgive what that person did to us. But if we're able to forgive who they are for whatever the reasons are, and it's hard, it's a, especially if it's something really monumental, but it is a
yeah,
gift to ourselves, because that's where I was kind of going with all of this when I was talking about these sort of little bits and pieces when you were sharing that beautiful story, is that, if we can just step back, and if we have an open mind, right? Like that's where I was going earlier with this, is that before, right? I'm running late. a train goes across my path and I'm getting more and more and more and more annoyed because it's an important, say, a meeting or an interview or whatever this is, right?
Right.
But
Right.
now looking back, and I've started to realize everything, it's so cliche, but it's true. Everything happens for a reason. Like maybe that if that train hadn't been there, maybe I would have gotten a car accident or maybe something else would have happened, right? So I've been
Yeah.
repeating this mantra, everything happens when it's meant to happen, right?
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're ready, like you can't force somebody into doing something,
Mm-hmm.
even if they want to, even if they're really interested in it or love it. You,
Mm-hmm.
until they're ready, they're not going to do it. And then it's about that readiness, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
about what you're saying. I agree. I agree with you
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Well, Carrie says she has to get to class, but she's loving this and you ladies, and she's going to watch the rest when she gets back. Have a great day at school. Thank you for being here, Carrie.
Yeah. Thank you, Carrie.
Mike is adding he did forgive his sister, and it's quite a larger I'm just reading what Michelle said. Oh, Michelle, I'm going to read your comment in just a sec, Mike. Michelle in Australia, and she's a friend of the show as well. Everybody's a friend that's here, but I know some people more than others because their names show up. So she says, I'm at things happen the way they happen because that's what's meant to be. I have to agree with
Yeah.
her. I feel that way too. And
Yeah.
Mike says he did forgive his sister. And then he said narcissists are often perceived as arrogant, egotistical people who don't care about anyone or anything other than themselves. Now, I'm going to stop right there for a minute. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, Sheryl. I'm beginning to feel almost like we have a narcissistic epidemic. And we really are seeing it now, whether it's been identified more, but I think society has really progressed to a place of I've got to get the next biggest and hottest thing, and then we think that's going to bring us joy globally, and then we, on and on and on, and it's me, 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 me. It's reinforced everywhere. But when you look at a narcissist, and there's some really great resources out there, Dr. Romani on YouTube, there's quite a few you can watch. When you realize what causes a narcissist, and again, without pointing the finger of blame, it's
Hmm.
like a developmental step has been missed in their childhood where they would develop many of these things that we may see with a narcissist. That's what I feel, anyways. What's your thoughts on that? Because I think this could help a lot of people.
Well, I first of all, I was in a very unhealthy relationship
Mm-hmm.
with a narcissist,
Mm-hmm.
and one who was an alcoholic,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like my it's like I was almost addicted to him,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of I would leave and then I'd go back, and then I'd have enough and then I'd go back,
Mm-hmm.
and and it wasn't until he was going threatened to cut me up into a million pieces and
Oh, I'm
bury me in the
sorry.
backyard. And you know what? It's all good because at that moment I went, okay, you're going to go to bed. You're going to go into a deep drunk sleep. I'm going to pack my bags and I'm out of
I'm
here.
done.
Yeah.
Right?
And so look what it took me. It might have taken me to that extent to realize, and I didn't understand about narcissists. I didn't know what they were really. I mean, you read about them in your psychology
Yeah,
classes.
you think narcissists are the people, like seriously, even from a nursing background, and you don't, and I
Yeah.
realize they've had them, most of us, we seem to connect with them as empaths too. But my whole point is, you're always taught
Yes.
that it comes from the name of Narcissus, the god who couldn't stop looking at himself in the mirror, right? So you think it's somebody that's in love with themselves and thinks they're so gorgeous and beautiful. That can be part of it, but there's a lot more.
That's just a small
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it. And
Mm-hmm.
really, a narcissist wants to control. I have to close this curtain.
Oh, go
Uh, the,
ahead.
the sun is just going to be coming in any second
Oh,
and
go ahead.
take over here. Oh, there we go.
There you
All right.
go.
So the narcissist So I've done a lot of reading on narcissism and talked to a lot of people who
Hmm.
have been through
Yeah.
those kinds of relationships. And what the things that seem to have in common is, first of all, the narcissist, first of all, has a story about their lives. They are
Hmm.
always the victim,
Hmm.
and everybody else is at fault. Everybody is at fault.
Hmm.
Uh, and there is nothing going on inside of themselves that makes them go, oh, wow, that was my fault. you
I
know?
don't think though that's where I was going with that, Cheryl, though,
Yeah.
is that it's like they were missing that in childhood when we're like a sponge from 0 to 7, and you may have just parents that themselves were narcissists, or sometimes they focus more, and I'm not pointing a finger at parents. Parents do the best that
No.
they possibly can,
Yeah.
usually. That's a whole different discussion. But they focus on, maybe the children only get the attention when they do really well, or they're pitted against each other, or whatever it may be, right?
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
almost like that developmental stage, what Spirit's giving me right now. And it's even been proven in science. So you've got a baby that can roll or maybe sit, but they miss
Yeah.
the crawling stage, and the creeping stage. They just go from sitting there rocking to maybe be able to roll, and all of a sudden they're walking. That is a huge developmental stage that can lead
Yes.
to so many pathways in the brain that don't grow, don't connect, right? That's almost
Or
what I feel. And I'm
children
not
who aren't
making
held.
yeah, and I'm not making excuses for narcissism, but to be able to try and understand, like, why can you not? Like, exactly all these things you're saying, like, why? Like, why would you always think that somebody else is the victim, right? And we actually talked a little bit about this last week, and not that I ever usually talk about this topic, but it's come up now, 2 weeks in a row. So I guess
Yeah.
maybe Spirit's wanting us to talk about this. And sorry, I
But
wanted to
it's
throw that in.
huge.
Hmm. Go ahead.
And they are the victim. Like,
Hmm.
um, and my son will forgive me for this. And he was involved with a woman who had his twin girls. She had 3 boys from a previous relationship, and
Hmm.
now she has and she is a prime example of what a narcissistic sociopath would
Hmm.
be.
Hmm.
So she's not out to kill him, but she's out to destroy him.
Hmm.
And she did everything in her power to destroy him using the girls, using the,
Hmm.
the twins. Um, they separated, and she had this story about him,
Hmm.
and she kept that story alive. So eventually the girls believed that their father didn't love them, and even though my son tried to get a hold of them,
Hmm.
she had the phone. She had control of everything. So
Right.
she could keep this story alive for, they're 18 now. And if
Hmm.
she has a chance to get on Facebook and
Hmm.
bash him with the same story
Hmm.
about what a horrible father he was,
Right.
about how unsupportive he was, and she has people believing them, and where the socialist, where she comes in with that is, she doesn't it's like she doesn't care about anyone else
Hmm.
unless they believe her story.
We're
And
seeing a lot of this, though, right?
yeah,
So you got to
yeah,
look at, and it's so hard when it's your children, right? But that's where
yes,
I really believe that truth always rises to the surface
yeah,
eventually.
it
So
does.
I think it's about choices, right? Like, we are meeting a lot of different people. Like, I'm hearing so many stories about this and people going through this. Like Mike said, he felt it was the opposite of empathy. And then he said, I
Yeah,
feel no joy in recognizing my sister has this and it's horrible. But where I was
it
going with
is.
this is, it's difficult and a lot of people are going through this, but how does one cope with stuff like that, right? So how can we, there are things we can do. Um, you know,
There's some things that, like, if you're in a relationship, um, and so what ends up happening is it's all part of the trap. Like,
mhm,
empaths, for example,
mhm,
they're capable of seeing the light in a
mhm,
person. seeing the good in a person when others cannot.
Mm-hmm.
This is why they get into, because they see the silver lining, they see the light in that person. And oh, there's good in that person. It doesn't matter if he's Jeffrey Dahmer, there's still good
Mm-hmm.
in him, you know?
Well,
And
that's true, but then I think you get into the discussion about boundaries too, right?
yes,
Because it's so important to have boundaries, regardless of whether it's a narcissist. It doesn't
yeah,
matter throughout life, right? I think, and there's nothing
yeah,
wrong with saying no. That's why I really like to say if something resonates with you, by all means, feel free. But otherwise, like, especially probably when you're doing readings, right? And I
yeah,
don't know about you, but I found sometimes, especially with a mediumship reading, you'll tell
yes,
somebody something and they'll give you this look like, what are you talking about? No. And so I usually just say to people, you know what, just take what resonates with you, leave the rest. I like people to record when I'm doing a reading though,
yes, same
because
here.
okay, that's where I was going to go with this, because, right, I always say to them that, yes, this may not resonate with you right now, may not make any sense, but you're going to remember this reading that we're doing here today, and maybe whenever, and you're going to go, oh, yeah, now I know what you meant or what that person meant. Have you ran into that before?
Oh yeah, a lot of times, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I got a confirmation just the other day of that same thing, and said it finally came to be. I finally understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even remember it. I didn't even want to remember it. And then they happened to find their stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
They happened to find the whole reading again. They were
Right.
going to files, delete, 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 right? And oh, I'll listen to this one more
Yeah.
time. As you couldn't believe how much of it. Oh my God, yeah,
Wow.
that happened. Oh my God, that happened. And oh my God, she was right about that. Oh my God, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
so it was really affirming for her, to
Mm-hmm.
know that, first of all, that she could trust me. Second of all, that she had grown in the
Right.
direction, right, that we had talked about. Now, I just want to say one more thing about empaths.
Mm-hmm.
Just one, and narcissists.
Mm-hmm.
Just one more thing, if I can, I digress here.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And that is because there's such, I believe, because there's such a surge in empaths. Now, an empath will absolutely 100% feel what another person is feeling. And if they want say something to someone that makes them feel like it might hurt their feelings,
Mm-hmm.
they feel it.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to feel it. And so they don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So they don't, the reason,
Right.
and so all empaths and everybody, as far as I'm concerned, have to learn about boundaries.
Yes.
Perfect boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter who you're with, it doesn't matter what you in
Mm-hmm.
this whole world of diversity and of polarity, uh, where we have to, at some point, we have to learn to say, like you said, learn to say no. We have to
Mm-hmm.
learn to say, no, I don't want to do that. I cannot do that. And I'm sorry
Mm-hmm.
if you're hurt by that, but it goes against everything in me. And I can't do that.
So
So,
important, because you know what? You're right. We
yeah,
can feel that it's going to hurt somebody else. And say you've got to have a
yes,
conversation and you're dreading it, trying to say it as loving as you can, but you can feel that person's pain, and it's just the worst feeling. So that's why it's so important too to get into, I always say I think we can all do work on healing within ourselves. I know I'll be doing it till the day I die, including lifelong learner. I'm going to
hmm,
stop just for one sec. I want to give Kelly Hopkins a huge shout out. She says, hi, Laura, and sending us much love. But you know what? I just realized as we were talking, and I was so curious about this, and I did not ask you till we got on the show. In your bio, you talk about working with the Philosopher's Stone. Would you explain
ah,
to people, because we know it if you're a Harry Potter fan and you know a little bit about it if you get into legend and lore even before Harry Potter, but I would love to hear all about that and what exactly that is, how you use it, and
Well, where the idea of the Philosopher's Stone comes from is that there were alchemists
Hmm.
of old
Yeah.
who believed that they could get lead, and through alchemy, which is uh, through different chemicals, through different adding things together to create something more powerful, that they could then transmute that lead into gold.
Yep. Hmm.
And so that is what, so it, the like iron into lead, or into
Hmm.
gold. So
Hmm.
the to take minerals and turn it into gold.
Right.
And so if you use that as a metaphor,
Okay.
um,
Hmm.
that's how I use the so we are philosopher's stones, in the sense of all of our negativity is the lead or the iron, or
Okay.
and okay, and that within us. So whenever I do, if giving a workshop, I'll relate to that. So the philosopher's stone in a workshop, where it is, okay, so let's put let's discover something that we don't like about ourselves. What is it that
Okay.
weighs us down? What is it that takes our brilliance away? What is it that takes
Okay.
that light away from us, whether it be depression or whatever like that? So that becomes the lead, that becomes the iron.
Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
And so now what we're going to do is then we're going to apply a little bit of alchemy to that. So then we'll do a meditation, and what I use in that is the a phoenix.
Okay.
So okay, so then you're holding this, and now you're holding this rocket stone, and it's something you want to transmute. And so you're holding it in the meditation,
Hmm.
and then and then a and then a phoenix will come and take the stone, and it'll burst into flames and release the negativity.
Hmm.
And now when you take you then the phoenix um, will turn that lead into gold for you, and then drop it in your hand. So now it's gold. And so I mean, the meditation is, but that's to put it in a
You know
nutshell.
what? I wasn't sure you were going to say meditation, but I kept hearing this. So it's a meditation you walk people through, right? Is that what you're saying when you're
Yes.
teaching? I got you. I got you completely with that. I love what Michelle said. So what she's saying is, so we take what we learn and create something better, for example, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I'll use an example here. Maybe somebody's having a hard time manifesting something they would like maybe money, and they're sort of sitting within the lower socioeconomic economic platform. They're having a hard time. They're living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck, right?
Yes.
So you could look at
Yeah.
that as the lead, right? So if we took the philosopher's stone, right? So
Yeah.
how could we turn that around? Basically by using what we have in the moment, taking what we've learned from this, because right, I really believe wherever we are in a situation in life, there's always something to be learned or taken from that. Go ahead.
So
Hmm.
okay, so here we've got this lead, and on
Hmm.
it we've written poverty. Okay.
Okay.
So
I
that's
like that.
our
Okay.
poverty thinking, or lack, just lack, you
Love it.
know.
Okay.
And so on this, it in our visualization, and it's we are seeing our lack, and we just need to identify the word. We don't have to come up with a whole explanation of it, because it's all lack, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
and um
absolutely.
and so how we could transmute that is we transmute it with a strong emotion.
Oh, I love
And
I'm so glad I asked you this because this is really starting to take shape now. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
yeah,
I was very excited though. Okay, so a
so
strong
it's
emotion.
so a strong emotion. So
Hmm.
now you're going to imagine, what is it that makes you feel like, because a thought is just a vehicle,
Right.
and the emotion is the gas. So what are you
Hmm.
going to put in that vehicle?
Hmm.
So that's the emotion, right?
Yeah,
And
I
the
like it.
stronger and more powerful the emotion, that is the phoenix. The phoenix is the
Ooh, I love it.
emotion.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what the emotion, and the phoenix becomes the emotion, right?
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah. And then as in the visualization, as the phoenix turns into fire, it is leaving you with the gold, and it's
I love it.
leaving you with that feeling. And that feeling and the phoenix carries that to where it needs to go. Some people use angels instead of phoenix. Some
Right.
people use, but the thing is that if you want to change something, you have to write a letter. You can't just
You don't know
and
how
mail
many
it.
times, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm so excited by this because I always believe when something shows up in my field of vision,
Yes,
twice in a very short period of time, I pay attention. When it's
you
more
bet.
than three times, please share because I'm very excited by this and I'm doing, I think, exactly what you're going to say right now. I am doing this right now because you're about the fifth person that has said this to me in like a week. But go ahead, please share with our listeners. I was
Oh,
so excited.
wow. Okay, so yeah, spirit animal works, a phoenix, but everyone can relate to a
No, but the
phoenix.
magic writing it down, and I call it
Yes,
my magic journal.
yes. And the reason it's
Yeah.
magic is because, first of all,
Mhm.
it brings it from the etheric realm into the
Mhm.
physical.
Yeah.
Now you're bringing it down. You're
Mhm.
bringing it into that physical realm, right?
But
And
when you write it down, you're
yes,
okay. So, for example, and please tell me if I'm on the same track with what you're talking about. I call
yeah,
it the magic journal, and you write it
yes,
down like you already have it. Thank
yes.
you, thank you so much for this. I'm going to use, for example, say a new car. Thank you. That's not what I work an example, or maybe it's a new home or a new job. Thank you for whatever you're asking for. I'm so happy in my new job, for example. I love it. The people are so amazing. The universe you always bless me with these amazing gifts. And, I get holidays when I want them. So you're writing down exactly like you have it already, and you're attaching the emotion to it. Like you said, a powerful, positive emotion, right?
And many of us are blocked in the sense
Hmm.
of how do we
Hmm.
change something? And so
Hmm.
I stole this from Abraham Hicks. I love
I
what
know
they
who that
had to
is.
say.
Hmm.
I love Abraham Hicks.
Yeah.
Love them.
Hmm.
And and this is what Abraham said was, um, uh, "Thank you, thank you, universe, for all the happiness in my life
Yeah.
I don't yet know about."
That's another way. Yes, I like that too.
Now, how the reason that is so important is because not everybody knows what they want or how to put it into words.
True.
And so, say for example, like I'm a plus size girl, for example,
Hmm.
and I've been on, I had been on every weight loss program that existed
Hmm.
in mankind, and 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 what I realized is it had nothing to do with the food that I ate. It had
Hmm.
nothing to do with any of that. It had to do with self-love.
That's true.
So and so for me to look in the mirror and then say it as though it was real, for me to look in the mirror and go, I am 100 and so many pounds, right?
Hmm.
I am thin and beautiful. Well, if I didn't feel that way about myself, now there's going to be resistance.
Hmm.
And if I look in the mirror and say I am wealthy and I am abundant and I am, and if I didn't really feel that way,
Hmm.
then there's resistance. And
Absolutely.
you cannot have two thoughts at the same time that are
True.
opposing each other. You
Hmm.
cannot. It's
Hmm.
one or the other. You have to choose one or the other.
Yes.
And if you're going to choose a thought that's going to cause a lot of resistance, then you need to take it in baby steps. Then you need to be able to say, how do you say that I am abundant and vibrant and beautiful? How do you say that in a way that's not going to cause resistance? And so it's everything becomes a personal journey, that
Mhm.
all that you're really given in like a seed, it's a seed, right? And
Mhm.
so I'm just giving you a seed, but you're the one that grows it. You're the one that decides how it grows. So it's so that's what the Philosopher's Stone is, in the sense of a visualization
Like a
experience, right?
vehicle, right? Like kind of like a vehicle, like you said, right?
It is a vehicle.
Mhm.
It is a vehicle. When I found that, thank you, universe, for all the happiness in my life that I don't yet know
I like
about,
that.
I was so excited because there was no resistance. I didn't feel anything that went, well, you can't have that. I'm
Yeah.
going to win $1 million.
Yeah.
And what's the resistance that comes up? You have to find that resistance.
Mhm.
What is the voice in your head saying that is
Yes.
opposing your thought?
Mhm.
That's where you need to change it. That's where
Mhm.
you have to change. Is that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Then too, because yes, I know exactly what you're speaking of with
Mm,
Abraham Hicks. I kind of go in cycles, right? Like, it just depends.
yes.
There's so many great teachers out there that
Yes.
it's just kind of like we go in cycles, right?
Yes.
And I hear what you're saying about the resistance. And then when I was mentioning earlier too about healing, like, right, being a journey of healing lifelong. And again, it's not that we're pointing the finger. When I mentioned, say, when we were talking earlier about our discussion where some of these issues can come from childhood, right? It's
Yes.
about coping with what we've been given and learning how to accept it in some way and release and move on, right? And
Mm,
again, with forgiveness, you don't ever have to forgive what somebody did to you. It's just about, you know, somehow finding that place. I think that some of this are what we talked about, finding that resisting spot, because we can do it. It's hard, I'll
yeah.
give you that. But I also think
Depending
it's,
on, yeah.
oh, go ahead, depending on,
Depending on how much emotion that it brings up, because some people don't want to go to in. So you have
I
to go
agree.
through that emotion in forgiveness. You have to go through it.
Well, I was
Not,
going to talk about shadow work too, right? Like shadow work
yeah.
goes hand in hand with this as well, because that's where we
Yep.
find the resisting. And then we find what that may be, whether it's an emotion or a thought. And then when we break it down, we
Hmm.
get to the root of it, right? And start to be able to process it and hopefully start healing, right?
Do you know we have two shadows
Mm-hmm,
that we are born with, two
mm-hmm,
shadow selves?
mm-hmm,
And they're actual entities that are born with us,
mm-hmm,
like a spiritual entity that is with us.
mm-hmm,
And there's the light shadow and the dark shadow. The light
mm-hmm.
shadow, um, the shadow basically picks up all your dirty laundry, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And and the light shadow picks up all the good things that you don't claim about yourself, or you miss that
Oh, I like
opportunity.
that. Mm-hmm,
Yes.
mm-hmm.
So the the light shadow is about working with all the things, all the pearls that you missed
I
in
like
your
that.
life.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm,
So now this is about uh, receiving those pearls. It's about accepting those pearls. It's about
mm-hmm,
those pearls. So the shadow work is both. It is both
mm-hmm.
light and dark. And it's so what happens most of the time, what it is that we're carrying a lot of our past with us, the things that
Oh, yeah.
have
Mm-hmm,
happened to us in the past. And so we need to realize that we're only allowing the past to have as much control over us as we give it.
mm-hmm,
So the shadow, the shadow carries that.
mm-hmm,
And so we need to go through it. We need to find a way
mm-hmm,
to lighten it, to
mm-hmm.
lighten it up. And forgiveness is the
Right.
process.
Mm-hmm.
It's the process, right? It's the
Yep.
letting go. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
It's
basically, forgiveness is the phoenix.
I love it. So glad we talked about. So we've had a few different comments here, and I'm sure this is going to help a lot of people. I want to back up a little bit because Kelly said, "Ooh, I know what you're talking." She means when you were talking about the Phoenix and the Philosopher's Stone. She said, "Okay, so it makes sense." I had about 20 pages in my journal. I could put my glasses on. Sorry, guys.
I
And
love
about
what you say.
I had about, yes. She said I had about 20 pages in my journal that held all my hurt and pain from a past relationship. I took those pages a couple of weeks ago and burned them, releasing all those emotions of hurt and pain. Yes,
Yeah,
Kelly, good for you. And she
no
said the
kidding.
flame was huge, and I asked my spirit animal to help me release that energy. Ever since I burnt those pages, I have felt a ton of weight lift from my heart and shoulders. I no longer carry those negative emotions. I'm so
Hmm.
happy for you.
Yeah,
Congratulations. What a
absolutely.
mhm. What a
Yeah,
beautiful
she should be proud of
process.
herself. Yeah, she should be proud of herself for that. That
Oh,
was a tough one. But again, it's that you're writing a letter to spirit. Whenever you're writing down your words, you're writing it to spirit. I want to change. I want to do this. And
mhm.
you're writing it with intention. Intention is everything. So your intention to release it is like you're writing a letter to your soul. Okay. And then when you burn it and release it like that, you're basically mailing the letter. Now you're
Okay.
mailing the letter to your spirit, to your soul, to
Mhm.
spirit, to the universe.
Right.
And so you're mailing it. So and that's why they can transform and feel the weight being lifted from them.
Because I think, you know what, it's important always, whether we're teaching, it doesn't matter what it is, to understand how somebody learns best. But I do believe that most
Mhm.
humans that have their physical eyes, I'll say, because
Yeah.
when we're missing a sense, say if we're not able to see, we're blind, other senses develop more strongly. But I believe we're
Yeah.
visual, most of us are very visual. I mean, there's a reason why
Mm.
TVs and movies are so successful and videos and what have you, right?
Yeah.
I do have to make a comment here, Michelle. Maybe I'm misunderstanding you. It says, "Can we see your faces, please?" Is that what you meant? Because we are on video. I don't know. Are you not
Yeah.
seeing us? Is that because I hope you are, or did I misunderstand that comment? I'm sure you'll let me know, but I'm not sure maybe what you meant. But I know you'll write it down. But you know what else I wanted to talk about, Sheryl, is different. I mean, you do so many things with your work, and you're an author. So you've got some books published, obviously, right? Do you have any
Yes,
upcoming? Like, let's talk
embracing
about those.
embracing your empath is the full book.
I love
Um,
it.
yeah, embracing your empath. And and it you've got my chapter, don't you? The chapter that's going into the holistic oracle.
No, I
Oh,
don't. Mm-mm.
I thought Rain would have sent that. Okay,
No.
it's all right. I'm sorry, I should have sent it to you. But so it goes into the different types of empaths. There's 14 types of empaths, and it also goes into defining what an empath does, so that
Wow. So
yeah,
key.
so yes, so it
Mhm.
goes into. I mean, I'll just give you a couple of examples here.
Yes, please do, because I
Yeah,
know. So I'm going to just refresh people's memories for just a little bit here. So I had my friend Rain Dalrymple on here a couple weeks ago, and she was talking about a collective book of many talented healers, writers, light workers, and it was being. So you've got a chapter in this book yourself, right, Sheryl?
yes.
Okay, so this is what we're talking about. So please continue.
So what I do is I define 14 empaths that were channeled, and I also define what kinds of things that make up an empath. So um, why are you an empath, right?
Right.
And so all the different traits of an empath, and
Okay.
there's many traits that you can have. If you're all of them, you're probably in trouble. But and and I also go into like generally speaking, just a couple of traits. For example, that almost all empaths are kinesthetic and tactile. They
Thank
may
you,
be
because
very
that's a
tactile.
word I was thinking of earlier when we were talking about teenagers, especially young teenagers with their energy being able to move things, right? That's
Yes,
mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
And they also feel physical and emotional feelings of someone else as though they were their own, although they may not realize where those feelings come from.
Okay.
We do end up, and that you end up realizing that that doesn't matter. Um, they're very emotional. They can cry on a dime, those kinds of things, right? They abhor violence, like they cannot handle violence.
I agree.
Yeah, and and they avoid conflict. They prefer to avoid conflict
Yes,
wherever they
yes,
can.
yes.
Yeah, because they highly value peace,
Yes.
because they're highly loving and highly
Hmm.
trusting. They and so anything that goes against that is very hard. It's very hard for empaths to be on this planet, and yet they're natural healers. This is why you will go out and you'll have 20 people who want to talk to you. You'll have all these people who want to tell you. If you're sitting beside somebody on a bus or on
Yeah.
a yeah, they'll come up and tell you their life story because
Yeah.
you're an empath, right?
Hmm.
Um, so those are just a few things, The animals, children are drawn to empaths.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and if they're a child, animals and elders,
Mhm.
especially elders, are
Mhm.
drawn to young empaths. Because they just love them. They just absolutely num 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 num.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're clairsentient, and
Hmm.
so an empath is clairsentient, really,
Hmm.
is what it is. But also so there's
Can
a
I stop
lot
you
of
for
different.
one sec? There may be people that don't know what clairsentience is. And to me, it's a knowing of things and feeling of things, right? Claircognizance is knowing. Clairsentience is feeling like everything around you, right? What would you like to add to clairsentience? Because some people may not ever have heard that term listening before.
Okay, so clairsentient is of course means clear feeling. It's a heightened, but
Perfect.
it's a it's a heightened ability to feel, sense, smell, taste, touch. Um, they feel emotions out of the blue. They can sense a subtle shift in the room. They can, or air pressure. They might feel a sense, and like when a spirit shows up, you'll feel the air pressure in the room
You're reading my
change.
mind because I was just thinking all these things going through it.
Yeah,
Or like if there's been an argument in the room and you weren't in there, you just happen
yeah.
to walk in there. It almost feels like you're walking into a brick wall, or it's just so heavy, right? Like when
Oh yeah.
mhm,
Oh yeah.
mhm,
And so some of the empaths that I intuited is um, where some people you can be an empath and still be clairvoyant, because
mhm,
clairvoyant is clear seeing.
yeah.
And yeah, and it's clear seeing. And so what that means, what did I do with that paper? I'm so bad with this.
You're
Terrible.
not bad. I'm loving how where you're. I'm hoping you're going to come back on sometime in the future soon, because I'm just loving this conversation that we're having. And seems like we've got a lot of people chatting too in the comments here, so I think they're enjoying this as well.
Yay!
Yay!
That's the best.
Hmm.
Oh, I turned it upside down.
That's
so
okay.
so one of them is the visual empath, and the empaths of this nature, they embrace the visual seeing realm.
Hmm.
Much like a clairvoyant would, but there's a little bit of a difference. Is a clairvoyant might see a spirit standing in front of them like it was a real person,
Hmm.
a real person. So but an empath wouldn't see it as a clear person, in the sense of um, they would see a spirit, they'd get a feeling or an idea about it, and then it would become clear in their minds. What
You know,
the
I'm so glad that you defined this, because you're right. Like I can only probably, well, sometimes I can see spirit, for example, but to try
Mhm.
and explain it to people, you just did that so beautifully, because it's a feeling, it might be a smell, it might be whatever, but even if I see someone, It's not like they're standing in front of me like a person. It's within the mind's eye, and it's so hard to explain to people. It's not like a true clairvoyant that will see somebody standing there just as solid as you and I possibly. Not everybody sees the same way. So I'm so
Yeah.
glad you explained it, that you really shared that. I really appreciate it.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and it's yeah. So somebody who sees a spirit, they're clairvoyant, who see it standing in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And but a visual empath has to kind of work for it, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
like people who do what do you call it, remote viewing, for
Yes.
example.
Yes.
Now that would be an example of a visual empath, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's, and of course, we know about the emotional and the physical and the spiritual empaths, and but I go into that. But there's also people who might feel animals.
All the time.
They're empathic with animals, but they
Mm-hmm.
may not be with people, but they might be with animals.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so and there's and the most obscure one is called a carrier empath. And
Oh, I
I
gotta hit
remember
this.
when I channeled that, I thought carrier empath, and I'm just writing it, right? I'm just writing it,
Mm-hmm.
and okay, I won't question it until I read it later. And but the carrier empaths are the ones that they can be with something. So say I'm with you, you're having a really hard time.
Right.
And so what I'm doing is I may not be feeling what you're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
but I am carrying what you're feeling.
Okay.
So I'm going to then go and visit my friend who is an empath. And
Okay.
and or maybe they're going to do a reading for me. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm carrying this weight around inside me. And I
Okay.
feel it as a weight. And then so now I'm doing a reading for somebody and I can pick up on that person they were with. I'm reading them,
Mm-hmm.
not
The true
not the
person.
person. I'm reading who they're carrying with them. So there's these carrier empaths that are just carrying these people around inside them.
That makes a lot of sense because, like,
Yeah.
when I first started with the paranormal activity in our house, and like, this was a whole new world to me many years ago. And
Mm,
I started locally, and somebody came, this lovely woman, and she really taught me a lot. I, I think it was a lot for her to deal with her mom, who I found out I actually
mm,
knew. She happened to be a secretary at the nursing agency I worked with, and she had
right.
recently passed away. So she had identified that when she came, that she was really having a hard time with losing her mom. Her
Oh,
mom and her were just, they were like soulmates on this planet, right?
oh.
And so when she came and we got talking about a lot of different topics, she said to me, for example, I was just starting to delve into things like some of the concepts. And I think I asked her a question about cord cutting. And she actually said to me, there's a reason why this big long story. She actually said to me, um, oh my gosh, yes, definitely, Lorilei. But I'm telling you right now, if I was doing cord cutting with you, I could literally sit here for 3 days straight, 72 hours straight at the time, and I still wouldn't even make a dent in the amount of cords.
Oh,
But
wow.
but then again, right? You're carrying people's energy with you, and because I didn't know. I don't have that problem now,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but I
But
when go
but
ahead.
as an empath, you would
Mhm,
feel the heaviness and weightiness of it. So you would sort
mhm,
of give it a feeling. But
mhm,
say you were with somebody like that
mhm,
who was physically ill,
mhm.
and then you come and you go to another empath, and all of a sudden they pick up and they're feeling physically ill.
But I did, right? I worked in
Yeah.
palliative care and stuff, so
Yeah.
I would be like. That's why I think this is I've never heard that term,
Yeah.
but it's resonating with me because I mean, even working nights in the hospital, I've been working with 60 different people, and
Yeah.
again with picking up that energy, right? And again, I think that's what was happening. And I know that's not quite what you're saying. You're saying like if I was just carrying it but I don't feel it, and I didn't, but I'd go for a reading and someone would be picking up something that I'd be going, no, that doesn't resonate with me, because they'd be picking up that other person's energy that I'd be carrying, right? Is that
Right.
what you're
And
saying?
you're,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and you're embodying it, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
not feeling the presence of it other than it feeling like a bit of a weight. You're
that is
feeling it on your
so
shoulder
fascinating.
or heart,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're feeling, oh, look at Kelly. Thank you so much.
That's why I highlighted. So for people that are listening to the podcast, and Kelly, everybody here is amazing. I really love the people that are here. I'm going to remind you, we haven't got a lot of time left. That's why we'll have Sheryl back for sure. Kelly
Ah,
says, I hope Sheryl comes back on too. She's got amazing energy, and she does. She really does. And she's a fellow Canadian, Kelly, because Kelly's from Canada too. Mm-hmm.
ah.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to finish off with one more empath,
Please
and
do. Mm-hmm.
this is a morphogenic empath.
Ooh.
This is where I fall into, is the
Okay.
morphogenic, and we can morph into any of the other empaths. So there's
Mm-hmm.
14 of them. So that doesn't mean I am all of them, all of the time, but there's a few that I am almost all of the time. But I can morph into any of the other ones. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but it depends on what I'm called upon to do. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm called upon to do something visual, I could do it. If I'm called on to do something, um, you know, something in any of the other realms, like the cosmic empath, I can go there. I can, so it's sort of like I've got a finger in the pot,
A
but
jack
I
of all
don't.
trades. That's what I kept hearing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yes. And so I've got a finger in all of the pots, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm living in any of those pots. So
That'd be a
I
lot.
kind of, a few of them I might, but I go into, I'm a shapeshifter,
There you go.
is what it would be.
How
I'm a
cool is
shapeshifter.
that? So,
Yeah.
when is this book coming out again? Can you remind me the title? I have so many people on with different books, and I forget the title because you've written a chapter in this book Rain has put together, and I'm trying. I could see it, and I can't remember the name. So, could you please share it with everybody
Okay.
and when it will be out?
Okay. So it's called the Holistic Oracle, and
Right.
holistic is spelled with an H,
Yeah.
Holistic Oracle. And the ebook is going to be ready on the October the 8th. So the
Okay.
ebook will be ready for the download. So all you'd have to do is you can either get a hold of me,
Okay.
uh, and uh, my email is spiritualalchemy101 at
Okay.
gmail.com.
Okay, so that's listed because Kelly's asking that. I need to follow Reverend Cheryl. Does she have a page I can follow? We're just getting to that because Kelly also added morphogenic empath. Aren't they rare to come across? We're going to have to continue this conversation because we only have a few more minutes, but we will. So you're also, I've got that in the write up with the banner, and the banner's everywhere on all social media platforms. But can they reach out to you on social media? Or are those just sort of private things that you
Yes,
keep? And okay,
they can get a hold of me on my Facebook, either
okay,
under Rev Sheryl M Hinds, or my personal Facebook is Sheryl M Hinds. Yeah.
and you're on Instagram too, right?
Yes, and
Okay,
I just go by Sheryl, not
yes.
Sheryl M Hinds. I don't go by Rev.
Oh,
Although I'm thinking of doing doing Rev Sheryl as an Instagram name. I'm thinking of changing it. So,
cool,
but
cool. When you come back on, we're going to have to talk about all that stuff. So, could you please repeat that email again, and then just some of the services very quickly that you do offer, so that when people connect with you and they want to work with you, Cheryl, because I can tell with people listening to this, they are going to want to work with you. Definitely more than
well,
so than what you've done.
well,
Hmm.
uh, spiritual alchemy, all lowercase,
Hmm.
101, or,
Okay.
101, right?
Hmm.
At gmail.com. So
Okay.
spiritual alchemy 101 gmail.com. And so they can get a hold of me there.
Okay.
And again, on Facebook, they can look me up.
But
And
you do reading still, or do you do teaching or
um, I
healing? And
do, I do readings. Um, I like to do healing one-on-one
Mhm.
and physically, because
Okay.
I find I'm more effective that way.
Mhm.
I could do long distance, of course.
Mhm.
However, I prefer to do the hands-on one-on-one.
Mhm.
And I also, but I do readings, mediumship, and I can do that Zoom or,
Mhm.
like we're doing right now. So we can
Okay.
do a party online. We can do any of
Okay.
those kinds of things. The other thing I'm also just started doing is, this is my new business,
Mhm. And what is
and it's
that?
called,
We got
and
about
it's
a minute
called
left, so.
Maiden, Mother, and Crone is what it's called, alchemy, and it's just gemstone pet
Ooh.
tags, memorials, jewelry, or
Well,
and
send me
the
the business card, Cheryl, and I will take a screenshot if you're okay with it, and I'll attach it to the show banner because I want to
oh,
add something very quickly. Now, Michelle Pratt, you have said in October when they release your book, we should do a show. Now, there's a problem with that. Okay, because
oh,
we are known as the UFO Paranormal Radio Network and everybody embrace this. We are in the month of October, October 31st,
ooh,
Halloween. So we are gearing, we had a staff meeting. All of all the live hosts here are gearing their shows in some way to the paranormal, the spooky, what have you. So I have some great surprise guests worked out so far. I've got a few slots. I've got more people than slots, so we may be continuing even into November. But so it might have to be in November, even December. Time is going by so quickly here, but I will have Sheryl back on, I promise. Also, I want to remind you, if you ever want to get a hold of me, and I appreciate the suggestion, Michelle, that you made, I will keep that in mind. And so Kelly says, me too. She wants that kind of show because they actually put a point in here we'll hold on to. Actually, Michelle Pratt said if we could go into maybe ego release next time we get together, because like I say, we are out of time here. I got to go quick. So if you ever want to get a hold of me for a reading, possibly teaching, mentoring, I do crystal Reiki. You can get a hold of me on facebook.com/the Angel Rock. I also have two groups on Facebook, Paranormal University for all things paranormal, and the Angel Rocker Tribe for many of the things we talked about tonight with Sheryl. I will definitely have her back on by the comments that all of you have made. And I haven't even seen most of them, I'm sure, because a lot of people leave them in different places all over. I want to thank you, Sheryl, so much for being here. This is an
oh,
absolute
thank you,
pleasure.
Lorilei. You are a blessing and a light in
Oh,
this world.
well,
I'm telling
thank
you.
you so, so
Yes.
much. And I want to let you guys know we will be back same space, same time, live next week, Monday. And like I said, we're jumping into the spooky stuff. And like I said, we're going to have some interesting people here. I send you all so much love and light. You have a beautiful rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you may be. We'll see you next Monday. Thanks again, Sheryl.
Blessings.